Scott Appleton's crew
Was
from
that
Brady.
right?
And,
Yeah.
Then went to Sam Houston. I liked that because of all the trees. It was totally air conditioned. And 61, September 61 is when I started school.
Yeah.
And graduated in 3.5 years. Almost made it in 3.
Right.
But I had to go to summer camp ROTC at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, with a lot of the Aggies too.
Yeah.
And the summer of '64 had to be the hottest summer I've ever been in.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And then I had earlier in January of '64 I'd taken a flight physical at Fort Hood, but the last eye physical of the day they flunked me. So I took my, I was a distinguished military graduate. In fact, I was the company commander of the Scabbard and Blade there, which is like a president of us. And I turned down my regular Army commission, which was armor and finance, and having had a degree with a BBA with a major in accounting.
Right.
And I took my reserve commission, which was military police. Graduated from Sam Houston in January. Spent about 6 weeks working for a tax service over there, helping them out, and then went into the Army in March.
In March of
65.
65.
And went to Augusta, Georgia, to Fort Gordon for my officer basic, and then was assigned to main post Fort Benning, Georgia. And from there, I was the
assistant. You were a second lieutenant?
I was second lieutenant.
Okay.
Yes. And I was the assistant operations officer there, and had just finished being on duty for all of Fort Benning, and got a call and said, "You're reporting the next day to the 1st Cav." Well, the 11th Air Assault was a test unit for the 1st Cav.
Right.
And of course we saw a lot of helicopters and everything and knew what was about to go on. And Lyndon Johnson had come on TV and said, "We're now committing Air Mobile Division to Vietnam. And we're changing the colors from the 11th Air Assault to the 1st Cav." And they brought those colors over from the United States and flip-flopped the 2nd Infantry Division's colors to Korea. And with that, we became the 1st Air Cav. General Kennard was the general, was the major general in charge, and he was an old 101st Airborne paratrooper of World War II.
Right.
Frame, Bastogne, in that area.
Yeah.
And we, at that point, the 1st Cav, when Johnson said we were committing Air Mobile Division to Vietnam, what he made real different was he did not call up the reserves or the National Guard. So at that point it became a tour of duty.
Right.
And consequently, those individuals with less than 90 days left in the service didn't go to Vietnam, and anybody with more than 90 stayed. In fact, a lot of them were killed during the Battle of Ia Drang, the movie We Were Soldiers was filmed in.
Yes.
We had 30 days to pack everything up, to test fire the M16. We were the first unit to go over with the M16. We had 450 helicopters. They had to be loaded. They were loaded on 4 aircraft carriers, Jeep aircraft carriers, and the rest of us were sent over by ship. I was on the William O. Darby, named after General Darby, and we left. And 1,000 men of the 16,000 that went over by plane.
Right.
And they were the advance party. They landed and they virtually cut a golf course, an airstrip, by hand, machete and tools like that, so that the grass would not be disturbed.
Right.
And our main base was An Khie, Vietnam, which was not very far from Quy Nhon, and right between Quy Nhon and Pleiku. Pleiku was where that had been attacked in January of '64.
Right.
And
so this is like the Central Highlands.
It was the Central Highlands, and we were placed there strategically to stop the splitting of the country. And so at that point we went over by ship. I was a provost marshal of the ship. A very interesting gentleman by the name of Lieutenant Colonel Stockton, who commanded the 1st of the 9th Cav, was the commander of the ship. And of course, we did have some people on bread and water that were going to try to miss the trip. They were AWOL, but we went through the canal, went out of Charleston, went through the canal, went up to Long Beach, spent about 6 to 8 hours in Long Beach, pulled up beside the aircraft carrier Enterprise, and we looked like a toy boat compared to the aircraft carrier. And then we left, went to Vietnam, and we arrived.
Were you an MP?
I was a military police officer.
Okay. Right.
And when I got to Vietnam, we unloaded off the ship into landing craft. We came up on the beach just walking, and we were picked up by helicopter and helicoptered up to our base. We were put out in grass that was up to about our chest high, and we saw this big mountain. It was called HONKON, Hong Kong Mountain. And they said, walk towards that mountain. That's where the division base camp will be at. And we did that. And we were pretty much all on line around the perimeter, because we were one of the first troop ships that landed.
Right. And
so there were only about 1,000 Americans there at the time.
Yeah.
And then we built the first Cav base. During that time, our area of operations was taken care of by one of the 1st Brigade of the 101st Airborne.
I see.
Little did I know at the time, one of the captains in the operations shop was Dave Hackworth, who wrote the book about face. In fact, it appeared on Fox many, many times. He always wore a black turtleneck, black coat, and had a Julius Caesar type haircut.
Right.
And I went out with the 101st Airborne, OJT. Even as a leg, I wasn't airborne, but they accepted me. And I went out with them for about a week and a half, and they were going through a real bad operation, and had just had a lot of guys that were hit. And from there, then I started supporting the 2nd Brigade of the 1st Cav, which was commanded by Colonel William R. Lynch, and he goes by Ray Lynch. He was born in the Madisonville area, went to Sam Houston, was in World War II with the Texas Division, 36th Infantry Division, was in Korea as an infantry officer, and then of course commanded the 2nd Brigade of the 1st Cav. And I supported his brigade with a platoon of military police on every operation they went out on until later in my tour.
Right.
During that time, we handled convoys, getting everything up from the coast all the way up into Pleiku. We ran convoys. We had 2 passes on either side of Ancay. One of them was where the French mobile unit was eliminated, as you see in the movie.
In the movie, yeah.
Yeah. And that was just a winding, just like that. You could see, as you flew over by helicopter, you could see the graves, and you could see all the trucks that were blown away down in the pass and everything. And we had men on both sides of those passes, I'll say infantrymen, infantry, and the military police ran the convoys, and along with everyone else. And then at the same time, we from there we were out by ourselves. I had about 18 of my men. We were guarding a bridge, and we were running convoys 12 hours a day. And that got a little hairy. We were, got a little fire here and there, but pretty much after that, then we came back into our base camp, and as a brigade would go out, a platoon of military police would go with them. And that platoon handled all the captured individuals, POWs. It handled all the captured weapons, worked with the MI team during the interrogation process. And then, of course, we provided security for the brigade commander. And so we always had somebody with him. We had somebody guarding the tactical operations center.
Right.
So our job pretty much, and then if we were in an area where there was a little town, we also did typical military police. When we came back into the division, then we actually acted as a division MP company and provided that type of security.
Right.
Very interesting when everything started hitting the fan over there in late October, what we call the Play Coup campaign, and then of course the 3rd Brigade, which had 2 battalions under Colonel Brown at the time, and Lieutenant Colonel Moore was just a battalion commander at that time.
Yes.
And of course they stepped into some real stuff, as you could tell from the book and from the movie.
Right.
And so after that, we were brought in to replace the 3rd Brigade, what was left of them, and we finished off what was left, and which really wasn't that much. Years later, I ran into General Norm Schwarzkopf, and General Schwarzkopf and I were talking. He actually had just made major and was an advisor with a Vietnamese paratroop unit during this campaign. And he saw me with my first CAV testing, and he came over real quick, and he said, "First CAV?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, and I said, "Yeah, and you were over in that area," and we started talking. And,
Right.
And he kept coming back over to me during this reception. And he said, "You know, I'm going to tell you, that was the most satisfying battle I've ever been in all my life." He said, because the CAV was running the North Vietnamese towards us, and we were on the border, and we were just cutting them down.
Right.
And, so from there, after the Play Coup operation, it was interesting because we came in on Thanksgiving Day of '65 into the Play Coup Air Force Base for a stand down for just a little while, and we celebrated Thanksgiving Day that year eating cold sea ration turkey, and I had gone to the officers club and was able, or to the PX, and was able to find 2/5 of Canadian Club. And I'm walking back to my platoon of men, and people are stopping me trying to trade machine guns and everything else for those two. But that's,
You weren't taking.
but I wasn't taking them, and that's what we had. That's what we had for Thanksgiving.
You've
And
been unpopular if you come back with a machine gun.
that's right. Take care of the troops.
Yeah.
It's one thing about ROTC that they really taught us was always listen to your senior NCOs, and I was blessed. I had a Korean War veteran NCO, and but after that, things sort of slowed down in December, and of course the 3rd Brigade came under Colonel Moore. He was promoted to full colonel. During that time, Cardinal Spellman came through. We guarded him. Bob Hope show. I had stage security for the Bob Hope show.
Really?
That was an interesting time. And then we started the operations again after the brigade, after the division was pretty much. A lot of changes were occurring. We were getting new troops in, people that had volunteered during the summer, that had already gone through their training, and they were coming in as regular Army. My first platoon of military police had about 2.5 years of college. My second platoon had about a year. But the thing is they were all regular Army. They had heard the call and had volunteered. And so at this point in that December, early January time frame, the 1st CAV was pretty much changed out. If you go back a little bit, the air assault unit was pretty much stripped, and they brought in all these new people, just like I was brought in. I mean, they had the senior commanders, and they had a lot of the senior NCOs, but they lost a lot of the people. And so a lot of them were real new to air assault. And so then this new group came in, and we had plenty of troops for a while. And then we started, we had a real bad plane crash. C-123 went down in the Ankei Pass, and hit the top of a mountain and killed everybody on board. And our military police had to go up there and help secure the area and take care of the body bags and things like that. And that, interesting enough, was a 3rd Brigade Gary Owen unit, 2nd of the 7th. I think it was Company A. And of course, as you well know, if you read the book We Were Soldiers, there was really 2 battles of the hydrant.
Yeah.
And one was only depicted in the movie.
Right.
The second one was
Yeah.
just, no one ever figured why.
Right.
But, and so, from there we started Operation White Wing Masher, which is the longest operation of the war, really, of all the Vietnam War. And it went for about 45 days. 3rd Brigade got into it, 2nd Brigade got into it, 1st Brigade got into it. During that time, we were down on the coast near Bong Song, where a lot of the rice was being harvested, and our job was to try to keep the North Vietnamese away from their food supply.
Yeah.
And it was one of the reasons.
I see.
And that area had not been, no one had been in that area. So we had quite an interesting operation during that time frame, and during that time, Colonel Lynch he had completed his tour of duty, and they promoted him to Brigadier General, and a new colonel came in from General Johnson's staff, and then in May I was called by the task to rotate to the 3rd platoon, and by doing that I would be supporting the 3rd Brigade under Colonel Moore, and because he wanted an experienced officer. And so at that time I went over to the 3rd Brigade, and once again we were back in Bong Song, going back to that same area, and I think it was Operation Crazy Horse was an operation, and and of course the 1st Cav received the Presidential Unit Citation for the Play Coup campaign.
Right.
But from there, we pretty much stayed out with the brigade, and on 4 July of '66, we were at Dong Tre Special Forces Camp, which was near the Tui Wa, which is on the opposite, closer to Saigon than from Quy Nhon. And I could show you on the map some of it. But we had the opportunity to have, of all people, we had General Westmoreland and everybody else that was a general there to give General Lynch, Colonel Moore, his Distinguished Service Cross.
Yeah.
And I just sent these pictures to General Moore. This is believe it or not, this is a Special Forces camp. There are informers inside the camp.
Right.
And here we are. This is Colonel Moore. And General Westmoreland. That's a better picture of him. And then
That's Westmoreland there. Yeah.
And this is where Colonel Moore, as I said, receives his DSC and goes home and is replaced by Colonel Daniels, who took over the 3rd Brigade. And it appeared at that point everybody was doing almost a 6-month tour in a higher level combat position.
Right.
I left, my replacement came in. Interesting enough, I had a replacement, but I didn't have orders, so I wrote to the Department of Army.
Right.
They sent me a letter saying, well, they knew I was over there, but they hadn't cut the orders, so I did not get to go home early. I actually stayed, and then my last operation with the 3rd Brigade, I came in and started looking for my orders, and I left the States by plane on 15th of August. Well, I went up to Fort Bliss for my last 6 months in the Army, and got out.
Right. And that was quite a year.
It was a very, very interesting year, and there's
Talk about, I want to look more.
yeah, there's a bunch of action photos and things like that. But
Was Colonel Moore depicted accurately in the movie?
yes, I heard a histories versus fiction, and there were some of the actual company commanders,
Right.
and there was Snake,
Right.
was there, and Tootal was there, and
Yeah.
so was several other individuals, and they felt like the movie was 70 to 80% accurate.
Right.
And I would say that since I just knew that I was there for his briefings and everything, I'd say it depicted him pretty well.
Right.
I think, in fact, I've got some
He's
things
still alive.
that
Is Colonel Moore still alive?
he is still alive. In fact, I have a letter here received from him on January 07.
I see.
And where I sent him the pictures. But interesting, he Mel Gibson, when he played him, said some very interesting things about the movie and what was said and done. And I was very fortunate. I served under two full colonels that were probably two of the best tacticians at that time in the Army. All of them, both of them made general. One of them, of course, General Lynch, had to medically retire.
Right.
And then Colonel Moore made 3 stars as Lieutenant General.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I had some interesting individuals that I met.
Right. So as a military police and being, I mean, you were obviously where the action was. Now, you were on the ground mostly, in the air, and you were both?
Well, if we could not convoy to where we were going to set up the brigade operations center,
Right.
we helicoptered.
Chopper, okay.
Or we went by Caribou, or by C-123 or C-130. Just
Right.
depends on, and most of the time it was what we call the Caribou, which was a fixed-wing aircraft. In fact, that's where I met one of the guys that was in ROTC with me. He was flying one of them.
Right.
Then.
So you saw quite a bit of combat.
Actually, I was on the outskirts. You know, we were very fortunate. We ran a lot of convoys, and there were attacks and there were mines, but we were in the right place at the right time. That's a better way to put it.
Right.
And I usually ran anywhere from the first vehicle to the second vehicle to somewhere close to the front.
Right.
Because I had responsibility for air cover and any other cover that we needed to have, or artillery or whatever.
Right.
But I honestly, I just say no. I didn't see that much convoy. Got shot at and mortared, and some other things happened. But
right.
I was.
What kind of weapon did you carry? Carry a pistol,
Well,
or?
I went over with a .45 pistol. The first operation I went on, I carried an M16.
I see.
After that, I picked up a captured AK-47, which I carried for for about 6 months. Then I was threatened with a colonel got on to me for carrying it, and I said, "Sir, I was only issued a .45," and he said, "Well, then here's what we're going to do." He says, "I'm going to get you an M16. So he sent me an M16 and said, "I don't want to see you with that AK-47 again." But there's a picture of me in combat gear. But
is this you here?
This is me there. And there's a picture of me with my M16 someplace. Let's see. Here we're loading up on a Caribou. Going into a Special Forces camp. A lot of times our operations center was in a Special Forces camp.
Right.
Yeah, helicopter crash. Shot up, captured prisoner. You know, we did have some. This is a lot of my guys. In fact, I have 2 very interesting stories. I should be carrying.
What are you carrying there?
M16 here.
Is that what's that?
Yeah, that's it. That's the M16.
M16.
Yeah. And that's operational like we mentioned. One of my Spec 4s had already been in Vietnam, and when he came in, he went into my platoon, and he and I became close. He was my driver, and we had one. I told him I wanted the fastest Jeep in Vietnam because he had a lieutenant with the biggest yellow streak down his back. And but he actually went over with me with the 3rd Platoon. I made him a sergeant, and later in years, this was my first wife. We divorced about 3-4 years ago.
I see.
And but come in.
Lewis Cover with the Suit Club.
I am tied up right now.
Okay.
Thank you. But I think I was going to tell you something funny or something.
So as you talked about your having to sort of play host to people like Bob Hope and Colonel Spelling and people like that. I guess that was
We actually had to provide security for him, even Eddie Fisher and some of those other people that came over.
Right.
We had the stage. I had responsibility for the stage security, and best part about them being there was that when they left, all the food that they had, we all got chocolate to eat part of it.
Are you one of these people?
Yes, that's my platoon sergeant.
Okay.
He just died about 2 years ago, and we stayed in touch my last 5 years. I've been in touch with one of my sergeants since 1987.
Right.
And I happened to write a letter to the 1st Cav Association, and he read it, called me, and then in '99, myself and 2 others started a reunion for our 545th MP Company.
Right.
And the 545th MP Company is the most decorated military police company in the Army.
Right. They
were in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. This is one of our 175s moving up.
KAMU is the one, if you go on George Bush and Houston Street, where you drive in there, right, where the former students building is, right on the right?
Yeah.
Okay, you drive in there. The one-story building right there on your left, about a block up, that's KAMU, that one-story building, that's it. And you can just park in the back of it. You can just drive around the back and park back there. And that's where we take the show. So Thursday at about 12:45, that would be good.
Okay.
And like I say, we just run the show's 30 minutes, and we just sit down, and you've seen the show. We just sit down and we just talk, and I'll put some pictures on. And
you want me to be any particular type of?
Well, I wear a coat and tie, but my guests sometimes don't. Whatever you're comfortable in. I know just your business attire is normally that, so that would be fine.
I should leave for about 12:30, right?
Yeah, we're in our chairs at 12:45. I'll be there by 12:30 just because they want to. I normally do this on Wednesdays, but I'm doing it on Thursdays.
If this helps you at all.
Oh, it will.
If this helps you at
I'd
all.
like to scan that too.
This is a letter from General Moore that I just received.
Right.
And this was a draft of the letter that I sent him. And this, let me go around here real quick.
As your commander, I mean, did you know him well when you were there? I mean, did you actually as a commander would know a lieutenant? I mean, as a colonel would know a lieutenant.
As a colonel would know a lieutenant only. Not anything real close.
Right. Y'all didn't have beers together.
But now General Colonel Lynch, Lynch, when he left, he said, in fact, I put it in there, he said, take care of yourself, Sam Houston, or something like that. These are our major combat operations in 65, 66.
Yes, sir.
And there were the rest of the operations. And of course, this is just that same
thing that I've got.
I happen to have written the first half of the history of the 545th MP Company. So this is just a quick history of it.
Yeah.
And then...
well, you make it easy on. You got it all there.
And then someplace in here, this is in the archives.
Uh-huh.
I had to get this out. I didn't even know I'd forgotten I had written it. Here's the annual historical supplement of the, yeah. Okay, that's the second part. That's the first part.
Right.
This is a ship went over history. This is our orders to send us. This is one of my after action reports that I had to write up. I can't find one of them. This was the lessons learned. This was one of the little pamphlets that we threw out, telling North Vietnamese what happened to them. This is our Thanksgiving Day meal. Our Christmas meal. This is the Bob Hope Show. This is one of my MPs. Anita Bryant there, or Anita.
Oh.
And
So this was sort of the program for it, or the?
well, this is a book he wrote.
Oh, the book.
5 Women He Loved
Oh, okay.
that he took over
Okay.
to
I see.
Vietnam. Here's some of the Vietnamese money. This is you don't want to write anything about that. That was the whorehouses we had to get our troops out of. Another after action report. Another after action report. And I didn't receive any medals or anything. This is something I just picked up. It's infantry things to teach people.
Right.
After action report on Nathan Hale. Adjutant General, this is my letter to them. I say, I am presently assigned, saying, hey, I want to come home.
Yeah.
And that was their response. This was how many operations we were on in our first year and how many miles we drove or were accomplished.
Wow.
And these were all the operations I was out on.
Right.
And the number of days I was out in the field.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get through this stuff. This is from one of my men, some of my MPs in the past. This is Colonel Lynch's
Are
helicopter.
you in this picture?
No, sir, I'm
Okay,
not. I'm
okay.
not.
Colonel Lynch's.
This is a little history about General Lynch. There's a full-size picture of him. See, he's got, this is 3 stars.
And this is his wife, who still lives in
Yes.
in Madisonville.
Right, and this is his history. And then this was a letter from her in '95, thanking me. Then this was a lead-in to the book.
Right.
And of course, Joe Galloway's from Refugio.
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
and then my picture with there. And then this is the VFW little insert about the movie. And then here's a little thing later on out of there. There's an interview, I think it was in the paper I pulled out. And this is one of the big Bong Song battles during January 28, 31, 1966.
Right.
And then this was the obituary on Julie Moore. And then this was the obituary on Jack Smith, who was in the IDRA.
He was a correspondent, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember him.
His
He was
dad
at ABC.
was TV announcer before him.
Wow.
Now, anything there that you want to
Yeah, no, I'm gonna take
look
these
at?
and return them to you completely intact.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that, Tom.
Yeah, on Thursday. This is really going to help me out a lot. So the battle, the Ladrang battle, again, that happened while you were there? Where were you in relation to that? Where were you?
During that actual time, I was back in base camp.
In base camp, okay.
And then the 2nd Brigade moved out to replace the 3rd Brigade.
Right. Right.
We came in on the very last part of that
Right.
battle. And where we were actually about 10 miles or so away, 10 to 15 miles away from there. We were at what we call the tea plantation.
Right.
And sappers had come through when the 3rd Brigade was there and blew up some of the helicopters.
Yeah.
And we got hit. I mean, we had a big, you'll see pictures of the tea, people harvesting tea leaves. And at nighttime, they would move in there and shoot at us and then move out.
Right.
But
right.
my job basically was to carry out a mission.
Yes, sir.
And to do support. I wasn't out there in the infantry.
Right.
Got a great deal of respect for the helicopter pilots, the medical people, the engineers, artillery. You know, our job was to, and because of that, when these guys, you know, got too much to drink or whatever, so many times what we'd do is we'd pick them up, take them to their unit, and let them out.
Right.
We wouldn't write up stuff.
Right. Well, sure.
And by the time I got back to the United States, then, you know, I had that patch on my right shoulder, and it was very interesting how senior NCOs would want to talk with you a lot more than they would as a young lieutenant. But by then I was the 1st lieutenant, and I decided to get out, and they were I was 4 months away from making captain at the time.
Right. Right.
But
when you read the book, and especially when you saw the movie and saw it depicted, was it a difficult movie for you to watch?
The movie, I went to see the movie the first time, the very first time it opened, by myself.
Yeah.
I have to say I got very emotional.
Sure. Yeah.
Especially driving home, I called one of my men, and we talked about it.
Right. Had he already seen it?
He had not seen it.
Yeah.
And because I think the movie did something that a lot of movies doesn't do. It also shows the effect on home life.
Exactly. And that's why I think that it's probably the best Vietnam movie probably ever made, because of...
It's the most accurate Vietnam movie ever made to date.
Right. And I think the fact that it did go back and forth from the battle to, you know, the scenes of the taxi cabs pulling up to the homes, and and Colonel Moore's wife, you know,
and
saying deliver them all to me and I'll deliver them.
And Mrs. Lynch did some of that with her.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, I had a daughter that was born while I was in Vietnam. It took 5 days for me to be notified about it.
I see.
I mean, but, you know, that's important, but it's not like the opposite end.
Right.
Where guys were getting shot and things like that.
Right. After the battle was over, did you, at the camp and all that, did you realize what had just taken place, or had it just been another battle at the time?
When we flew in to relieve the 3rd Brigade, and we landed...
The 3rd Brigade is what the movie was about.
The movie was about.
Right.
Actually, it's about the 1st to the 7th Cav only.
Right.
But the book, the second part of the battle was the 2nd of the 7th Cav.
Right.
And some of the 2nd Brigade companies.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
But when we flew from Ankei into... when we flew into the Pleiku Air Force Base, which wasn't far from where we were going to be, there was just literally mounds of material. Uniforms, boots, helmets.
Did you ever meet Joe Galloway?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting because Joe, my high school team scrimmaged Refugio in September of '60. So it's a good chance I may have met him, because he was only 19 during that time.
Right.
So, and that was what, 5 years later. So, he may have, but no, I did not, to my knowledge. We always had, because we had the captured stuff, we always had a lot of reporters around us.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were just trying to see if we did anything wrong.
Exactly, yeah.
And we worked with the interrogation team. I mean, but we treated the prisoners pretty good. I mean, but the interrogation team had to do their job. And I'll say there's some units that for a long time, they didn't take many prisoners.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, behind the scenes, we're not on the record.
No.
But,
I understand.
I mean, and there were times when we'd have, I don't know if I would want to say something like this, there were times when we thought prisoners were coming in by helicopter and they never showed up.
Yeah.
But if I had seen some of the things they had done, I'm not sure, Tom, I would have been any different than they would have been.
Right.
And it was, when we had, I was running a convoy up into that Manyang Pass where the French had been cut up one time. And I had an old bus and Vietnamese people were in it, hogs, pigs, everything else. I'm the front vehicle on a convoy. Behind us, we've got tanker trucks of jet fuel, ammunition, troops, and everything. And this bus is just barely going up this mountain because it's steep. And I mean, we tried to get them to move all over, and it's real narrow. I mean, it's only almost like a one-lane road, just about. It was wide enough for two, but you didn't want to meet if you could, except in the wide spots.
Right.
And I pulled up beside them, and they wouldn't move over. Well, I took that AK, and I ran 5 rounds past the driver's head in the air, and he moved over, and Lord Almighty, that bus almost
went over.
But I had a mission, and I was more worried about them, the guys getting caught in the ambush, and maybe this was the start of one.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna let you get back to work. If you give me these, I will. What I do is I take our conversation and I listen to it again, and I type some notes, and that way I have some notes to sort of lead us along in our conversation. And I'll use some of these things, and we'll just we'll get it done.
I will say this: the reunions, when we started doing reunions in '99, it's been some of the best things that ever happened.
Oh, I bet.
Because some of the guys buried it. Some of the guys forgot about it.
Yeah.
And that thing with all those letters or those dates.
Right.
A lot of guys weren't in my unit, but information in there helped open their mind to that.
Sure.
And the only reason why all those numbers are, and I don't want to really get into it, but I wrote letters home to my wife.
Right.
And so in 2000, I went through and put those in chronological order and then added the information, what wasn't written in the letters.
Yes.
And even so, there's a lot of stuff that's not in there because it doesn't need to be in there.
Right. Now, I didn't ask you after you got out what brief biography up till you bought this place. You started this place.
Well, I wanted to see what my degree would do. I interviewed with several companies. Was offered a job at Union Carbide. But I didn't want to wind up in New York. And I went to work for Ernst & Ernst, a national CPA firm in Houston.
Right.
And did that for 3.5 years. And then went to work as the vice president for finance of a hospital in Houston. Did that for 3 and then moved to Waco at Hillcrest Baptist Medical Center. I was there almost 15 years.
I see.
And then I consulted in healthcare for a few years more, most of that up in Tyler at the East Texas Hospital Foundation.
Right.
And there I was vice president for finance consulting. We had 31 corporations. Took them through a bond deal like I had done in Waco. And then asked the Lord what He wanted me to do. I've been doing my way. And the long story, I'll make it real short. Basically, opportunity came to me for Bryan, Texas, and interviewed. They offered me the franchise, and I told them I had to wait because I'd made a deal with the Lord for 30 days. And then nothing more happened except that. So I did my due diligence, bought the franchise, and opened it in January 15th of '90.
I mean, so that's you've been here since then, right?
Been here
Yeah.
since then.
Yeah. Wow.
And got involved in, when that started, I was one of the early donors.
Uh-huh.
And I'm real involved. We have an endowed scholarship program with
Right,
Glenn.
right.
We do scholarships with our associates, and with the family members. And we have a lot of different scholarships to different colleges.
Yeah.
I'm also a Silver Brigade Scholarship member of the First Cav, where that money's used for individuals that have their dads or their moms have been disabled or killed. And when we had our first reunion of our unit, I was in St. Louis at a hotel, and a guy I'm a life member of the VA here, and a guy from Bryan, Texas, walked up and said, "Hey, y'all having a reunion?" I said, "Yeah." And we started talking. He says, "Are you a member of the Post?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I'm going to get," and he brought this the next day and gave it to me and says, that was it.
I'll be darned. I'll be darned. This is great. Yeah, I love the Brazos Valley Veterans Memorial.
Well, I think that was a great thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, it was. My mother's first husband was killed in World War II, and his name is on the wall. I made sure that it was there. And then when my mother came here to live with us before she died, that's the first thing I did. I took her out there to see her first husband's name on the wall there. That's good. Well, Al, thank you.